Hello. So, I think we might be live. One thing I might need to do quickly is can't change this now apparently anyway. Scrap that. I was just seeing that it was telling me that there might be dropped frames, but who knows. So okay. So let me see if I can actually see this on my phone. No. That's so odd that I can't watch this, but anyway. Apparently, now here I should be able to see concurrent views and whatnot. Chat rate, no clue anyway. Beyond the point, let's. God knows what this is all about. Anyway, let's crack on with the tutorial. Also, Svelte.dev. I should probably make an account, but for now, I'll just leave it as is. Svelte app. I need to extract that. And I think the things I was saying the other day should be all in here. So this was. Can I? Yes. Okay. And then here we had this one. What's the problem? If I comment everything out. So that's fine. Alright, well that's not fine. And comment the script out. That's giving me smaller errors. Oh, this is named component 2. That should be component 1. Count is not defined. Okay. Oh, there we go. So the only issue was that it was called component 2, not component 1. But otherwise, we're all good. So let's crack on from the last thing that we were watching. Let me just check. Yeah, it's giving me an error, but not sure what I can really do about that.
Let's talk about event listeners on Svelte. So you probably have seen me done it before, how I add click event listeners to increment the buttons. But in this video, we are going to dive deeper and explain all the things you need to know about adding event listeners on your elements in your Svelte component. So let's take a look at the REPL over here. I have a H1 And if I want to add event listeners, this is how I would have done it. If I write vanilla JavaScript, I would have a reference to the elements, like the h1, and then I would say add event listener, and then
You know what I think I'm gonna do? So I've already got that saved. So what I'm gonna do, Svelte app, chuck in documents, and then I've already got a Svelte app. Replace. No, so if I call this Svelte app 2, then that should be fine. So that's saved, and now I'm just gonna reset it just because I don't want to have all this nonsense here if I don't need it. So then I can start off fresh, I guess. So we're gonna have script tags, and then we're gonna have an event listener, and then let's have a h1 tag, and in here we can say hello world. There we go. And let's see.
I'll pass in the event's name. In this case, if I want to add click, I will say click, and then I will pass in the event handler. So I will write event, I will have a function, and then I will do something on the event, right? I can define this function ahead of time, say on click. So there's two ways I can create the function inline, or I can create a function ahead of time and pass the reference to the function in this add event listener method. So the same thing goes in the elements in your Svelte component. I will start with the on directive. So on and then a colon defines that I will start to define an event listeners. So on, and then I'll pass in the name of the event. So over here I say click, right? So I'm gonna copy it and paste it over here. So on click, and then I just like how you would pass values to an attribute, you do a equal sign and then curly brackets because.
Okay, so on click, curly brackets. Okay.
So I want to pass in a function. So curly brackets, and then I'll pass in the function, reference to the function over here, and there you have it. So if in this events, I do a console log click, you will see that when I click on the h1, there's console out the click message. So that's how easy it is to add events listener to elements in your Svelte components. One thing we didn't cover is that if you do it this
what have I messed up? So Interesting. Function, on click, event, on click is not defined. What? I mean, this is commented out. That's what commented out code looks like. So that shouldn't be on click not defined. Script on click. if we just have A equals to A. A is not defined. Am I being stupid? Definitely. But H1 on click event listener. Why am I being stupid? Like, unexpected token. But then let's remove all this. And then I have A. It's as if the script is not scripted. Script A. Huh. Why am I tripping? Function on click event. There must have been an error, but what was it? I'm curious now. We got this. And then we had this. Oh. It was script like that. Silly me. And then like So it is using the event handler. I'm so confused. But then this is h1 dot add event listener, and then click on click.
This way, in your vanilla JavaScript, you have to remember to remove the event listener when you no longer need this h1 heading 1. But in Svelte, if you do on,
I'm so confused. On click. I am baffled. On click. H1 on click. fine. This won't help, but yeah, that won't. If I just take this away though, on click, and then what if on click I do? So that's fine. Yeah, I'm not really sure about that, but
On click over here.
why am I'm getting baffled over here. H1 on click on click is wrong. Function event. Oh, sugar. Okay. So, long story short, I figured out. I was being stupid with the misspelling, but I wasn't being stupid with this orange. I assume it's got the same error, but obviously it still runs. But no, that still ran with the orange errors. So obviously that's something new, but good to know. So anyway, the event listener works.
Here, the event listener will be automatically cleaned up by Svelte component if this H1 is no longer in the DOM. So one thing, it's automatically cleaned up, so you don't have to worry about it at all. And then, as I mentioned earlier on, we can either pass in a function or we can inline a function over here. So same thing, we can do that in Svelte as well. You can come over here and create an inline function. So anything within the curly bracket is
Okay.
we can write JavaScript in there. So click again. So I can write an inline function over here, and you would expect it to work as well.
Okay, let me try
You
that.
may be worried about inline functions if you are using other frameworks, because you might be wondering, would this be creating this function over and over again? There's no such thing in Svelte about having to running something over again, right? This function is not, if you are not going to change this function is not going to be changed, then this function will be just defined once and attached to this h1 once, and that's it. So if you don't believe me, come over to the JS output. You can take a look over here. This function click again is defined over here once, and then this is being passed into, somehow pass it into this function, right? So this function is being defined once. You don't define, if you try to search around, there's no one is defining this function over and over again. I can guarantee that to you. So no worries about no any performance penalties whether you're using a function or inline functions. Okay, with that settled, one thing I want to cover before we end this video is about event modifiers. So let me come back with this on click because it's easier for me to do it over here. So a lot of times we love to do things like say events.prevent default. Right? For example, if you have a form and then you add on submit event and you want to prevent the default behavior of that submit so that you can make some validation and then cancel the request. Things like that, you often come in a case where you have to write events of prevent default. If you have some events like drag and drop, you always needs to do like prevent default, then one great tip for you, you don't have to do it you don't have to like come over here and then for each of the click you have to write it here. You can come over here and add event modifiers. Basically you do this pipe and then you pass in a modifier. So a prevent default modifier will automatically add the event prevent default for your events handler. So so you can have event prevent default. So what else besides that? You can have stop propagation. So that is propagation. That is also another modifier that does the events.stop propagation for you by default. So for example, if you have a nested element, so for example here I have a parent and then I have a child, I can come over here on click and stop propagation. And come over here on click on parent. You would assume that so you assume that this will not propagates the events up to the parents will not propagate and bubble up the events to the parent. So this is you write stop propagation is the same thing as coming over here and have event and write event.stop propagation. It's the same thing. So you can use event modifiers or you write it your own. It's up to you.
So would I've not done that before, but would it? How come he's not getting an error there? I just realized that. Even still, I am getting an error for this. But yeah. So basically it's shouting at me because it's not a button per se. So if I made this into a button, and this was made into a button. Yeah, so that's fine. So that fixes the error. Even though I'm like a bit keen on copying what he's doing, just I'm learning, it does make it easier. Yeah, just because obviously not getting many errors that are just distracting. So let's see. What was I going to do? I'm just going to try out how this works. Div, alright, div. And then let's just have a test. Let's have a parent, and then div child, and then unclick unclick. Is it like that? Yeah. Actually, might as well just copy this This must be different because, oh, it seems not getting this error, and it's in the same thing. So this would be child. So that is working. And then if I do something like so, does that mean if I do this? Oh, okay, so I think I get what back propagation means. Because now if I do this, stop propagation. Oh, okay, that's quite cool. But I've got an idea. I could put these buttons in here instead, and that way I could have it demonstrate that it's still doing the button thing, but then it's also not gonna shout at me for having it where it's like messing with the divs. So if I chuck this in here, hopefully this works because I cannot really be asked with it not working. And then chuck, I mean I could just take this out. That works. And then one click, you would say clicked, and then I could remove these two, right? So now this will say child, this will say collect. But if I didn't have to stop propagation, okay, so I think it only is an issue if it's on the divs, which is fair enough because if you have it on the div, that means everything inside it gets the click problem. But then obviously, if I have it there, I think it might shout at me for giving it to the div, which is obviously not a clickable option, yeah. Yeah, so it needs to be handled, and it's not happy about that. Which kind of makes sense.
So for people who are familiar with add event listeners, you know that the third parameter over here is that you can add some options to the events listener. Right, let me pull up the MDN documentation. When you say add event listeners, when you scroll down, there's options. And options, you can pass things like capture, once, passive. So how do you pass these things to your event listeners? Because you can't really control it over here, right? You have no way to get involved with the add event listeners. So you use event modifiers as well. So for example, if you want to have a capture event, you want to register event at the capture phase, you can write on clicks pipe capture. Now if you click on when you click on a child, you see that the parent is on a capture phase, so parent will be called first before child. And once, how about once? You can phase, so parent will be called.
So
and write on clicks pipe capture. Now if you click on when you click on a child, you see that the parent is on a capture phase, so parent will.
okay. Now I don't think this would work for this because it's not on the actual div, and if it's on the div then it shouts at me, but I'll still understand. Capture collect. Yeah, just for ideas. You know, it doesn't work that way either, I guess. Fair enough, but I get what it means.
Will be called first before child. And once, how about once? You can do that as well. You can have a pipe and then once. So now the parent will only register once. So it will be using these options once as defined over here in the add event listeners. Same thing with passive. So passive is you have to pass in a boolean. So true or false has different meaning in it, right? So if you want true, you will pass it as passive, and if you want false, you will pass in as non-passive. So it really depends on which one do you want. Okay, and then so you can see over here I can pipe as many event modifiers as I want, and the order does not matter. I can pipe in all the event modifiers as I want, right? So the order does not matter. And one last event modifier I want to share with you is self. So if I come over here and say self, so this is not in the event listeners over here, but what self does is, hopefully it's self-explanatory. Self means that if your event listeners, if the event or target is self only, it will trigger, right? So meaning in your event handler, you're checking event.target equals to the current element, and then if it's true, then you will do something, right? If it's true, then you will do something. So if I do self, then if I come over here and click a parent, you'll see that I log out parents. But if I click on the child, then yeah, the target is the child, and it propagates to the parent. So it's the target is not the parent. So you don't see console log parents when you click on the child. So prevent default, stop propagation, and then we have capture. Then you have passive and non-passive. You have once, and then you have self. 7 modifiers that you can use. If you can't remember all this, don't worry. You can always find them in the svelte.dev docs. They are all listed over there. Event modifiers. Yeah, all 7 of them are listed over here. You can take a read.
Step into Wix Studio, where creative freedom
All right.
absolute efficiency.
We are gonna talk about one big important features in Svelte, and it's one of those powerful things that sets Svelte apart with everyone else, which is the reactive declarations or statements. Well, so what is reactive declarations and statements? We shall see, but let's start with this example first. So over here, I've created a component that has a count variable initialized with 1, and I have 2 buttons, which is decrement and increment. So whenever I click, I will increment or decrement the value of counts, and at the same time, I have these expressions called counts times 2. This anything within a curly brackets can be a JavaScript expression. So over here, I'm going to say counts times 2 over here, so I can see this is always 2 times of the count.
That's quite good.
So this is okay, right? Nothing's wrong with this. But what if I have another button over here, and I'm going to call it do something, because I'm not sure what I'm going to do yet. I'm going to say click me. Okay. And in this function, I'm going to define this. Okay, now I know what I'm going to do. I want to console out the value 2 times of count. So I probably have to come over here and say counts times 2 again, and so that every time when I click, I see the value 2 times of counts is printed in the console. So nothing's wrong with this, because this example is simple. But what if you have a more complicated example where you have a super complex formula over here, and you want to access this variable at a lot of places? Well, at that point of time, you probably would realize that you can't calculate this on the fly anymore, and you would want to come here and define this variable called double. So initialize with counts times 2. So I'm going to show double over here, and then I can use this as well. But as soon as you do this, you realize that so at first it's 2 is correct, but if you increment, it's still 2 because you got to update this variable double. So you come over here and look at all the places that you do counts plus plus, that you or count minus minus, anywhere that you make changes to counts, you have to say updates the value of double as well. And this does not scale. It works, but this does not scale because what if you have another button? I'm gonna call e scale because it does not scale, right? Okay, I'm gonna say multiply. Alright, so I come over here as a function called multiply, and what it does is that counts equals counts times counts, always multiply by itself. So now again, I need this is out of sync again because I need to come over here and do double equals counts times 2. I need to remember to do that every time I add a way to update count. So this is error prone. Every time you update counts, you need to remember to update double. This does not scale, so what should we do? Well, this is where reactive declarations comes in. So this statement itself, so a declaration is a type of statement, and this statement itself is a declaration statement. Because over here we actually declare this variable double. So reactive declaration is a declaration statement that instead of you call let's double equal something, you start with a label dollar. So this dollar label over here, if you have, so you use a dollar label over here and you write double equals counts times 2, right? So you replace the good old declaration and with this reactive declaration. So what is this dollar label thing? Well, this is actually a label statement used usually with loops, for loops, while loops, where you can label a loop and then you can break it, right? If you have a multiple nested loops and you want to break the loop at the second level, right? You normally can only break the nearest level. You want to break like some first level, second level, or third level of loops, then you have to label them and then you break with the label. So this is actually a label, and if you know that this is a label, which means that actually I need to define this variable double, right? But then you don't have to come over here and let's double, right? In normal JavaScript you would have to do this, but in Svelte what we do is that we call this reactive declarations, and we will inject the let's double for you, so you don't have to declare it, or you don't have to define it. So you write this, and then there's this menu of reactive declaration. What this does is that it will always execute every time when you change count. So which means I can save my time not to do this. My code is cleaner as well. I don't have to come over here and manage the double whenever I change count, and you can see this double value changes instantly when I change counts. So this is reactive declaration. So let's talk a bit more on this reactive declaration.
Okay, kind of makes sense, kind of doesn't, but is what it is. So if we pop, I don't know, I guess over here, count. Yes, that gives us 1, and then if I have double in here. Double equals. Then, oh, it's running those buttons. So, it's printing out the value. Well, it's not changing the. That's a function for that. But it's not really changing the actual value of count. So. Yeah. Increment and then have the little bracket and then plus plus and then have that in there, and then if I do something like this in here, and then I do this in here, yeah, no, I don't need this. That might work. That's 2, that's 4, that's 6. But why? Because so counts at 3, but double. That's odd behavior. So it's 6 here, 10 there, so it's as if it's using the 8 value. Interesting. So how would I fix that? Because no, because that shouldn't be the case, because if I print out that, that means count is at 3 at this point in time, and then double should be using 3 times 2. But then it's not. That's odd. So double's getting a later version of this for some reason. Just out of curiosity, I'm gonna try different placement. That shouldn't be. Yeah, that's not the case. Interesting. Because he's got that count equals 1, and then double equals 1 times 2, and then it runs an increment function. Which is what I've got. There. So if I do, what if I do it like this? Will doubles be still the same? So that is 2 right now. So the output is working perfectly. But then there, this was not. Just strange. But I can't lie, I'm not that interested. Obviously I am, but it works. I'm not sure why it's not working properly, and there's no need for me to delve into it too seriously for the moment. I'll just try to absorb as much as I can.
So you've seen like why we need this, because every time when you change a variable, you have to manually, painstakingly update a new value that derives from this, right? So you see the why, but let's talk about like how it works in more detail. So over here, the title I say reactive declarations and statements. So this is not just declarations. This can be any statements. So any statements that start with a dollar colon will be a reactive statement. So I can come over here and say console log count. This is again a reactive statement. So reactive statement, reactive declarations. The only difference is that declaration is to declare something, and if you declare something, means that you don't have to define let's double yourself, right? It's being declared together with these statements. And sometimes, of course, you if you write this, it does not. It is still okay, right? You can still define it, but the point is you can omit it if you want to. So so these two, okay, reactive declarations and reactive statements. And how does they work? How do they work? How they works is that actually they will actually look at what I call a dependency of the statements. So what dependency means is that if something, so these statements, these reactive declarations or statements depends on something. And what is that something? That something is variables, states variables that is
So I think I might have cracked it. So I think double only is ran when, I guess it is, well, yeah, if you press the button, I think it realizes that this is a value of interest, and then it goes back and refreshes it. But then when it's doing console log, I'm pretty sure it's just saying, okay, so what is double? And it gets it, and it uses it, but doesn't refresh it, because I don't think it thinks it's something of interest. It's just it wants the value. I think that might be the reason why it wasn't updating properly when I was trying.
used within this statement. Okay, so what are they? So for declarations, it will always be all the variables on the right of the equal sign, right? You depends on these variables to update the value of double, right? So anytime when you see assignments in a reactive statements or declarations, the one on the right are the dependencies. So this double depends on count.
That's the discount in my statement,
so
but
statements,
anyway.
if you don't have assignments, then any variables that you can see here are the dependencies, right? So if I say count, so over here, this example will have two. The console, it depends on console and depends on count. Over here, it depends on count. So I prepared some more examples over here. Let's see them. So full name, first name, last name. So this is a decoration, so or assignment. So whatever on the right, which is the first name, on the last name is the dependent. So anytime first name or last name change, this whole thing will be evaluated.
Mm-hmm. Sounds lovely and all, but I want to try it. I see, so now it's doing what I kind of expect it to do, to be printed out every time it's updated, and now it's updated, so fair play,
Here,
so that works.
This case will be A, B, and C. Anytime A or B or C changes, this whole statement will be evaluated. But here is num1, num2, and calculate, because it's still an assignment. And over here, this is statement, so whatever is the count. Here, this is the same example, so I'm gonna remove this. Copy this down over here. Right over here, do something, A and B. So anytime any of these changes, you will have to reevaluate these statements, right? So when we reevaluate, say in our previous example, we reevaluate, meaning we have reevaluate this, which means that we're gonna reassign the new value to the variable double. So why this is important? Well, this is important because if, say for example, if you have do something, A and B, but you do something with, say, console log A, B, and C. You do something with A and B and C, then you have to know that anytime C changes, you will not you will not call this function at all, because it only depends on here, right? So if you define this, only do something A and B, A or B, or do something changes, will call this function again. But anything that is being used over here, C is from outside. Like if you have counts out from here, or you come up with a new variable D over here, whenever they this can't change, right? But any variables that you refer from this function outside of this function changes, this will not call, meaning it will not call this function, right? So that is one thing that you need to take note of.
Makes sense.
So second thing that you need to take note of is that when this is being evaluated, right? When this is being called is important, because when this is being evaluated decides when the value of the double being updated. So if you come over here and I say console log double.
Oh, this is what I was doing. You see what I was doing?
Know that it's double.
Oh my
Come
god.
over here and you run this, and I click increment. You'll see that this value always lags behind of what.
Yes. Yes,
fact,
exactly.
This is actually the previous value that you see.
This is what I was doing. Yes.
This now it's 18. When I click, it shows 18. This is the previous value. You haven't update double, right? You tell me that whenever you change, you will update this value of double. Yes, but not immediately. It's not immediately. It's asynchronous. It does not happen immediately.
It's shit.
It happens
exactly.
right before Svelte updated. Right before. Right. So, right before it updates this double over here, it evaluates this. Okay, it gets a new value of double. Now it's 20, and then it shows on the screen. But over here, it's not there yet. So when you come over here, you change count. See that the value of double is still the old value. So this is important because Svelte can't go everywhere else whenever you change count and then increment a double immediately. There's a lot of work, so it only happens right before the Svelte updates the DOM. So this note number 2 that you need to take note of. Then the third thing that I want to talk about is...
That didn't really make too much sense to me.
It's not there yet. So when you come over here, you change count, see that the value of double is still the old value. So this is important because Svelte can't go everywhere else whenever you change count and then increment a double immediately. There's a lot of work, so it only happens right before the Svelte updates the DOM. So this note number 2 that you need to take note of.
So basically,
And,
yeah, makes
the thing that I want
sense.
to talk about is the order of the reactive statements, right? So I can come over here. And then do something like console log double. So let's practice what this statement depends on. Depends on console, depends on double, right? So anytime console or double changes, this statement will be reevaluated. So you expect that double. So over here, every time double changes, you evaluate this, right? So you expect this will shows the latest value of double. Well, in fact, it does, right? So now it's 4. You reevaluate this right before it updates the DOM. Okay, double is now 4, and then you console log 4. But what happens if you write this right before when you evaluate double? Well, if you write it right before,
Makes sense. That to be wrong.
Svelte actually will reorders it for you. So what that means is that Svelte
Oh.
actually will look through all the reactive statements and reorder them based on the dependency order.
Oh,
So
that's
case,
cool.
double depends on count.
I like
This
that.
statement says double depends on count. This statement says it depends on double, right? It does not create anything, but it depends on double. And if I come over here and have another variable, say quadruple, equals to double times 2. So this quadruple depends on double. So you would expect that okay, you can't see quadruple. Okay, let me show it here, quadruple. Right, so whoops. Yes, quadruple is written before the double equals to count times 2, but the dependency has order itself. So you have to reorder Svelte. Not you have to, but Svelte will reorder this for you. Will say, okay, doubles depends on count, so this, but then quadruple depends on double, so this has to come after. Right? And then this console depends on double, so this has to come after. So if you have cases like this, you have cases where two things are depends on double, then the initial ordering does matter, right? The order does matter. It's just that if there's dependency order, then that counts in priority, higher priority than your initial ordering. So for example, if I come over here, console log double 2 equals to double, right? These two statements, both these two statements depends on double, but the initial order does matter. So if you write double 2 first, then you see double 2 and double. But if you reorder this, reshuffle, come over here, you'll see double first before double 2, right? The order does matter, but the dependency order counts first. So that is notes number 3. The dependency, the order of the order of your reactive statement will be reordered based on the dependency order. So hopefully these 3 nodes, the dependency order, and then what is the dependency, and and then they will be evaluated asynchronously. These 3 things, if you remember it carefully, you can avoid a lot of pitfalls involved with reactive statements or declarations. Lastly, a few other things that probably you also need to take note of is that reactive declarations or statements only happens at the top level, so only here. If you come over here and define something like this, double equals counts plus 2 or something, it has no effect outside of the top level. It already shows you this warning, right? So
Okay, that's cool.
yeah, that is something else, a small thing that you need to take note of.
Hey, you ever seen a wealthy person or a wealthy family or a jet
No,
owner?
shush.
Got a jet, I'm sorry, you know. You
Shush. Tick.
We talk about reactivity as well as we talk about reactive declarations and statements. And I think it's time for us to talk about the tick function. So what is tick? Well, tick is a built-in function from Svelte that returns a promise, and this promise will be resolved when the update is finished. Right after, as soon as any updates, any pending updates that is already applied to the DOM, then the promise returns from the tick function will be resolved. Enough with this definition. Let's take a look exactly what it is. So over here, I've prepared an example. Over here, you can see that this is what we left off from the reactive declarations video. If you haven't watched that, links in the description.
Good
So
plug.
over here, we talk about, if you remember, I talk about reactive declarations are evaluated asynchronously. They are evaluated right before Svelte applies the changes to the DOM, right before. So over here, if you have an increment, right over here you have a double reactive declared double that is always 2 times of count. But in this function increment, when you increment count, double is not. This statement is not evaluated immediately, right? So over here, if you console out double, you will still get the old value. So if I click over here, you can still see that it's showing 4, but it's already updated to 6. So how do we make if we really want to get the value of double to be the latest value, what should we do over here?
Yes, gimme.
Well, we talk about tick function, right? So obviously we're going to use the tick. So you're going to import tick from Svelte. And tick is a function that returns a promise. So you can use .then when the promise.
Yeah, that works. So I can still see, so it's fine. But yeah, I just took them off for a bit, so it's not giving me a headache. Alright, so I've done an import. And then here we can do the tick thing. So tick, and then dot, then, and then let's see what he's got to say.
And when it resolves, it means that it applied all the changes.
Oh.
And when it resolves, it means that all the changes that's going to be made has already been applied to the DOM. Meaning DOM changes has been applied. Meaning this double has been already updated to the latest value, right? This statement will be evaluated right before you apply changes. So when changes has already applied, definitely double is already 2 times of the latest value of the count.
So just repeat that again.
This statement will be evaluated right before you apply changes. So when changes has already applied, definitely double is already 2 times of the latest value of the count. So come over here and I move this double in. Right, so this I'm gonna say after tick. And just for comparison, I'm gonna come over here and say before tick. So let me click on the button. You can see that before tick will gets 2 because this is evaluated synchronously, and then when Svelte decides to update, because there's a changes, Svelte decides to update the DOM, and they evaluate this double, and then you apply all the changes. You see 2 times 2 equals to 4 on the screen, and then this promise returns from tick will be resolved, which you can then console this value out. So this, although it seems that it's coming right after another, but it's actually run a little bit longer, right? So if I come over here, if I say if you're familiar with asynchronous and
Let's just look what I can. Sorry.
all the changes, you see 2 times 2 equals to 4 on the screen, and then this promise returns from tick will be resolved, which you can then console this value out. So this, although it seems that it's coming right after another, but it's actually a run a little bit longer than that, right? So if I come over here, if I say, if you're familiar with asynchronous and synchronous, you should know that this happens asynchronously, so it's way after. Even if I put before here, you should see that before comes way earlier before the after tick.
Oh,
So
that's odd,
this
but sure.
so tick function, it's a promise, and sometimes I don't really like to use the then. This is just my personal preference. Sometimes I like to change the function to be a asynchronous function, so that I can await the tick. I come over here, await the tick, and then console this out over here.
Sorry, I got a bit distracted.
And await the tick. So tick function, it returns a promise, and sometimes I don't really like to use the then. This is just my personal preference. Sometimes I like to change the function to be a asynchronous function, so that I can await the tick.
Yeah, I was gonna think about implementing that, but
The tick,
that's just
and
too much effort. I'll just listen.
console
But that
this
seems like a lot
over here.
better way to do
So
it.
this is the same. This is the same behavior as what we've seen before. Instead of it's just that I can use async await, so that it's less nested. I would say, like, because I don't have to do the callback function in the .then, it feels like it's nested in. Since it's one straight line, I can wait for this promise to resolve and then do my thing over here. So it's the same thing. It's just my personal preference of writing it. So what are the use cases of this tick function? Well, I prepared another example that you can use this tick function as well. So I'm going to import this component called input.svelte. So let me comment out everything and just show the inputs. So this input, we've learned how you can add event listeners, right? So I add an input event listeners. So every time when something has changed, I will update the value to be whatever the value of the input to uppercase. So right now I have so just to show the effect, I comment out the to uppercase. When I type anything, the value will the value, because we're passing in the value in, so the value will be whatever I'm typing in, right? So I don't have my caps lock on, but when I type something, you'll see that it will automatically converts to uppercase, because the to uppercase will convert the value, and then you get the uppercase value of the value, and you pass it in, and then you update the input. However, this way of updating the value of the input, because the value of the input originally is lowercase, and then you assign it to a value, and then you have to use this variable value to assign the input value, right? You're calling internally, it's calling input of value to this new value that we evaluated, and this value is not the same as whatever it's internally in the input. So what happens is that it will clear whatever state you have within the input. It's a bit I'm not sure whether I describe it well enough, but what it means is that if I come over here, I type something, and I try to highlight something, and when I try to highlight something, there's an internal state of this input. So if at this point of time I try to change the input value programmatically, right? If I don't do anything and I change the value programmatically, it will lose its state. It will clear all the text and then replace with a new text. And what happens is that right now, if I manually type some, let's come over here. I have a button, right? Let's just demonstrate this. On click, if I come over here and I say value equals to xxx, right? So I type something, I highlight something, and as soon as I click, oh, okay. I think we need to set some timeout over here then. I want to make sure that we are still in focus of the input. So when I click, I have 3 seconds before it's being triggered. Right, so I try to type something, highlight something. Okay, no, I highlight something, and as you see, when the value updated, the cursor will shift all the way to the right, right? Because you change the text, right? There's no way to restore the cursor position.
Yeah.
So even if you come over here and you do something like value equals to value to uppercase, because just now we changed it to xxx, right? Definitely there's no way to restore the cursor. But if you come over here, type something all lower caps, and I highlight something, and then I change everything to uppercase, you see that my cursor jumps all the way to the back. So that's
Fair
annoying
enough.
actually. If you haven't realized it yet, this is actually very annoying, especially when you implement this updating the value within input handler. Meaning if you come over here, you try and type something, and I highlight something, and I'm supposed to press on Q right now. It jumps all the way to the back, and I type Q again. You see that it's typing at the end of it instead of like where my cursor was supposed to be. So
Oh yeah,
how should I
that's
solve
bad.
this? Well, I can save the selection start and end of where I can get the selection start and end from the input. So I can come over here and say let's selection start equals to this input.selection start, and get the end of as well. And once I change this value, I want to restore the selection, right? Input.selection starts equals to selection start. So once I update, I want to restore it. So let's try and see. So if I type, okay, right now I'm going to type Q, I'm going to press Q, but it still jumps all the way to the back. Well, at this point of time, you probably should realize that, yes, you change the value, but then the updates happens far later on, right? Asynchronously. As we have seen, if you want to have a reactive statements and you console out immediately, it does not update immediately because you haven't updated the DOM. So any changes right now happening right now, the DOM hasn't updated yet. So we haven't really actually called input.value equals value internally within Svelte yet. So the only way to wait for it to happen before we restore back the selection is to use tick. So we come over here, import tick, and I'm gonna come over here and I want to await for the tick. So I can't use await unless I make my function async. Come over async function, I'll wait for the tick. So wait for it to update the DOM. So internally this will be called to update the DOM value, and then we restore the input selection and start and end. So let's see what's the end result of this. Right, so I'm gonna type ASDF. Okay, I think I'm gonna type AAA so that it's more obvious. I'm gonna highlight this 3A and I'm gonna press Q right now. Q. You see the cursor is still maintained at where I was. And press Q.
That's cool.
And that it is. That is what we are achieving. So tick allows you to wait for DOM updates to be applied. So it returns a promise so that when this promise resolves, all the DOM updates has been applied, and then you can do something with it. So you can check any value of the reactively declared variables, or you can make some changes to the DOM, or you get any updated value of the DOM, right? You can probably instead of getting selection of the inputs, you can maybe right before you make changes, check the scroll position of your elements, and then you add new items, updates, and wait for that update to happen. Wait all the updates to finish before you say restore the scroll position or something like that, right? So tick will be very useful in that sense.
All right.
Terra is the IT pain.
Shush. So I think I'm gonna leave it at that. Getting a bit tired. One more thing I would like to do is potentially just kind of write out what he did on my end. But for now, I'll leave it at that. I might do that next stream or something. So before all that, I'll just go like so. So that's been stored. I need to also make an account for this, which I'll do off stream. But otherwise, yeah, that was fun. So done about an hour worth of the video, so not too bad. Alright, thank you, and see you guys.